Welcome to a special Halloween edition of Detox Rehab Presents Reflections. Today we have Corey, Bianca, and Connor. Thank you all for joining us today. I also want to invite anyone watching to comment below with your clean time and what helps you get through each day. Moving right into the reading, we have Avoiding Controversy. All history affords us the spectacle of striving nations and groups finally torn asunder because they were designed for or tempted into controversy. Others fell apart because of sheer self-righteousness while trying to enforce upon the rest of mankind some millennium of their own specification. As a person in recovery, we know we can cause real damage if we yield to the temptation and give opinions and advice on others' medical, marital, or religious problems. We are not doctors, counselors, or lawyers. We cannot tell anyone how they should live. However, we can share how we came through similar situations without using and how the 12 steps and traditions help us in dealing with our lives.
So doing going to people and trying to get them to do trying to suggest to them what's right is difficult because I would rather just tell them to do it, like this is what you need to do, so they can, because it's worked for me, and it kind of sucks when they don't take your suggestions on things. And I have an example with this. With religious problems, one of my old friends, he would put in my mind that my higher power wasn't good enough, and because he was in a religion that worshipped like a higher power like a lot, and so that made me like grow further and further away from the 12-step program because I feel like I didn't fit in. And that's why it's so important to just let people be. What's working for them is working for them, and just suggest things to them. And if they don't take your suggestion, then they don't take your suggestion. Don't try and cram it down their throat. That's how I work my program when I work with sponsees. I won't tell them what they need to do. I'll tell them what I suggest them to do.
So the way I kind of understand this, it happens to me most often when I'm talking to somebody I'm sponsoring, right, who might have like dual diagnosis issues, or like it says, marital problems or religious problems. I don't see so much just because we're so inclusive for that. But it's like, I'm not a doctor, you know what I mean? I cannot give somebody medical advice. Right. I don't have that power, right? Fellowship doesn't have that power. And then relationships are one of the most complicated things on the planet, I think, too. And there's definitely not always a right and wrong. And it's difficult to like get a full understanding of a situation that somebody might have with somebody else. So it's best to stay away from like impressing your opinions on somebody else. I think the best thing to do is to try to relate it to your own experience and then offer them that. And that's what I try to do, because they're touchy subjects and you don't want to risk excluding somebody, right? Especially if they're new and they don't really know what's going on.
Right.
With a 12-step program, it's definitely a touchy subject.
Yeah. Because, kind of the same thing you guys were saying. Of the 4 things they talk about in here, the one I have the most experience with and know the most about is like the 12 steps and applying those to the problems of addiction and alcoholism. I have like no training whatsoever that allows me to give any medical advice at all.
Right.
And never been married, and I don't really encounter religious problems that much, but again, not qualified to talk about those at all. I have no issue, like if somebody comes to me with one of those problems, I'm not gonna like try and overstep my bounds on that. I'll like, you should probably go talk to a doctor about that. Like, I don't think your bones are supposed to stick out that way,
Yeah.
You might need pain medication.
Yeah. But talk to somebody who knows,
Right.
And even, you know, in my life, I've come to my sponsor with kind of weird problems, and one of the things he'll tell me is he's giving me advice or suggesting what I should probably go do is right up front he'll say, like, look, I understand I don't have to live with the consequences of this decision, and you do.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that that's where I'm coming from when I try to give you advice. And it made me notice a lot of the times in my life I was trying to give people advice that I didn't have to live with the consequences of.
Right.
You know, if I tell somebody like, oh yeah, you're probably, like, you don't need depression meds or something like that, I don't have to live with them not taking meds. They
Right.
do. And they very well could need that medication. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not up to me to give advice that I have no experience or knowledge behind.
Right. It's just the only thing that you really can do is just share your experience, strength, and hope, what we were taught to do in a 12-step fellowship. I really like how you put in depression into that, because a lot of people get being depressed and depression, like they get that mixed up and think they're the same thing, because I struggle with depression, and I just like how you put that into perspective. It was pretty cool, so thank you.
The next reading today is called Our Relationship with a Higher Power. Ongoing recovery is dependent on our relationship with a higher power who cares for us and will do for us what we find impossible to do for ourselves. Working the 12 steps gives us a fresh start in life and some guidance for living in the world. But the steps are more than just a fresh start. When we do our best to work the steps, we develop a relationship with our personal higher power. In the third step, we decide to allow a higher power to influence our lives. Much of the courage, trust, and willingness we need to continue through the succeeding steps comes from this decision. In the 7th step, we go even further by asking this higher power to change our lives. The 11th step is a way for us to improve the relationship. Recovery is a process of growth and change in which our lives are renewed. The 12th step, the 12 steps are the roadmap, the specific directions we take in order to continue in recovery. But the support we need to proceed with each step comes from our faith in a higher power, the belief that all will be well. Faith gives us courage to act. Each step we work is supported by our relationship with a higher power. Just for today, I will remember that the source of my courage and willingness is my relationship with my higher power.
That was a good one.
This is like the foundation for the 12 steps, right?
Yeah.
Is getting in touch with something that can keep us sober.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we as humans who are in the disease of addiction don't have that power.
Right.
That's something that I've tried to overcome on my own many times. That's something that the police department has tried to help me overcome multiple times.
Yep.
It's something that my mom has tried to help me overcome, and none of these things have worked. There's no human power that can stop me from getting high. So this is kind of the education we get, is that we need something beyond ourselves that can give us what we need to stay sober and to start fresh and follow the rest of the steps.
Right. And when you say something beyond yourself, it doesn't have to be something specific. It just needs to be, I've talked about this before, it just needs to be something you love and you trust. And for me, my higher power is something that I want to be. And I really like this reading because it just reminds me that I do need to keep in touch with my higher power in order to maintain my recovery. Because without a higher power, and when I didn't have one, I was out in my addiction, lost, and I was scared, and I didn't know what to do. And I finally found something greater than myself, and it restored me to sanity. I dropped to my knees and I prayed, and I didn't know what I was praying to, but it helped me. And from that moment, I moved forward, and it's the reason I am where I am today.
True.
I always have a hard time talking about like a higher power and my higher power. And not that I don't like talking about it, it's just there's not much I can say to explain what it means.
Right.
You know, I heard someone say once that it's not a concept of my understanding, it's the subject of my experience. And then I heard that and kind of looked back over the course of my life and realized there were a lot of stories I have where, like, I shouldn't have come out of that okay. You know, I
Yeah.
probably should have died. Like, weird things happened. And here I am. Like, something had to have been looking out for me.
Right.
You know, maybe it was just random chance. Maybe I'm just that lucky. But, I mean, yeah.
I mean, with the overdoses and stuff like
Yeah,
that happening,
exactly.
there's no
And-
way.
So that higher power's always kind of been there working in my life in some capacity. And it's up to me to clear away all the things inside of me and in my life that have been getting in the way of, like, that relationship and that understanding. And that's what the steps are all about. And as long as I have faith that, you know, my higher power is going to take care of me through all of this, things probably, how do I want to say this? Things almost never work out the way I want them to.
Yeah.
But when I look back, they work out the way they were supposed to.
Yeah.
Like, and it may have been something that was unpleasant, something I didn't want to go through, something I was trying to avoid. And then I went through that, I came out the other side, and I learned, like, a valuable lesson about myself and about my life.
Right.
And it put me in a position to help somebody else going through what I just came out of.
Yeah. And it brings us back to the first reading. It's just an experience that you can help someone else with.
I
Yeah.
feel like the more that happens, the stronger my relationship gets.
Yeah.
You know, when things
Exactly.
don't work out the way I want them to, they work out the way they're supposed to. And then I look back and see that, and it happens over and over and over, and I always have a different idea of what I want to happen.
Yeah.
But I look back, and like with enough time, I can see that it did work out the way it's supposed to.
Right.
Right? And that just reinforces the connection that I have and the proof, right? The proof of my own experience of it works.
Yeah.
Like, one of the first, like, best examples I can think of is, like, the day I got clean. That day did not go at all the way I wanted it to,
Yeah.
you know?
It never does.
Yeah.
And then here we are, almost 2 years later, things are better,
Right.
you know?
Much better. I mean, at least for me, where I came from. I remember when I got arrested, I was crying, and not because I was getting arrested, because I was safe. Like, I had a place to go, and
Like done running.
yeah, I was just done. And you know, I wasn't happy I was going to jail, but I look back and I'm so happy I went, because I would most likely be dead if I didn't end up getting arrested and doing the time that I did. And you know, I stayed in there for not too long, but for enough time for my mind to clear. And I think that really helped me too. Like, being away where I can't really get anything, just where I can clear my mind and figure out what I want to do in my life. Do I want to keep running and die, or do I want to live my life how I'm supposed to?
Is there something like a skill or a lesson that you wish you had been taught before you restarted your life in recovery?
I mean, a lot of things. Right. I wish I knew a lot of things.
Yeah.
I wish I did well in school.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's endless things that I could, like, look back and be like, dang, I wish I learned that earlier. But I think that's for, like, any human being.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not, that, anybody can relate to that. Like, I wish I did this, I wish I did that. But the bottom line is, like, I'm here right now, I'm where I'm at, my recovery is where it's at, and what can I do now?
Yeah.
Right.
From this moment forward? What am I going to look back at 10 years from now and go, dang, I wish I would have learned that 10 years ago? That's kind of the way I see that question, and sitting in the past isn't going to do anything for my future.
Right.
So,
It's all about the
Yeah.
here and the now, basically.
And everything that I wish I had learned before, like, I got into recovery is stuff that I still have the opportunity to learn.
Right.
You know, like,
Sure.
how to be financially responsible,
Oh.
how to fold a fitted sheet. Like, there's all kinds of things.
the winning lottery number.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, so, you know, yeah, I have regrets about some of the things I missed out on along the way, but there's nothing I can't make up for.
Yeah.
Like, I still have time. Like, I started over my entire life. I've done one of the most difficult things I've ever done, and that's get and stay sober.
Yeah.
I can probably, like, take time to ask for help and learn how to do the other things I didn't pick up before I got here, you know?
And there's no rush either. Like, you
Yeah.
have your whole life out of you, but the most important thing is just living in the now and focusing on what's important in this moment.
Yeah, I think we summed that up pretty well.
Yeah.
All right, the next question is a bit of a scenario. They say, so this week will mark my 4th week of sobriety. Long story short, I've been hooked on amphetamine since I was 13. In a month, I'll turn 22, and I would like to think I'm making great strides in turning my life around. My relapses usually start with, let's get a case of beer to celebrate. And just as always, when I get about halfway through the case, my thoughts turn to, how can I sneak out of the house and score? Alcohol is most always the enabler on the days I end up relapsing. Does anybody have any advice on how to keep that at bay, or any tips on how to avoid the urge to drink? Much appreciated.
So I guess first, I would suggest the not drinking, which it sounds like you've kind of figured that part out on your own.
Yes.
The only thing I've found that helps keep that obsession from like coming back into my mind, because that's the way I've relapsed a bunch of times, is it starts out with I can go out, I can drink with some of my friends, and sometimes it's that night, you know, sometimes it's a couple of weeks later, you know, it might be a month down the road, but eventually I'm going to go back to doing my favorite way of getting loaded, you know? And the only thing I found that stops that from happening is to actually put work into the steps. To do this, to do all of the things that were suggested to me every time I tried to get clean, and that was things like going to a meeting, getting a sponsor, working the steps. And there were a few other things that came along the way, but right off the bat, that's the best thing I know to do for it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like this person describes the insanity of the first drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it is for lots of people, is the mind telling you that, you know what, I can control it this time, or you know what, I can probably just do this on weekends, or fuck it. You know, that's what happens to me, is that it's just, I don't even care anymore.
Right.
And
I even told myself, you know, I'm going to be a functioning drug addict my whole life, you know.
how did that work? It doesn't work out.
It doesn't really work out that well, no.
So like Corey said, I think that investing time and action into the 12-step program is the key.
Yeah.
Being open and honest. And I mean, look at your experience. If this is happening over and over again, I mean,
what do you need to do different?
right, prepare for that mental twist. Do whatever you can
Yeah.
to remind yourself that this is what happens when I take the first drink.
Right.
All right, moving on to the next question. It's, hey everybody, my birthday happened this week and it felt really good to be sober. That being said, it is my first sober birthday since I was 16. What do you guys do to make your birthday feel special in place of having a few drinks?
Ooh, I have one. Okay. So I'm just really excited because it was just my birthday. Your face is shocked. I'm sorry.
What'd you do?
So I went to Las Vegas and I didn't drink, and my mom was like, since it's your 21st birthday, it doesn't mean you can't like do what other people do. You just need to take alcohol and drugs out of the mix. And I went, and I probably had a better time than I would have if I was getting loaded. I would have just probably stayed in my hotel room, drank and did drugs if I was going when I was still using, or I probably wouldn't have. The practical is I wouldn't have gone at all. But it's just like you can do anything you want to do, just no drugs, no alcohol, no mind-altering substances, and it's gonna be fun. Like, you just have to, if it's uncomfortable, get uncomfortable, and just keep moving forward.
For me, like, I don't really have like extra money when I'm getting loaded. You know, everything I have goes to drugs, and then I don't really have a lot of friends to spend time with when I'm getting loaded, unless they're also getting loaded.
Yep.
And even then, it's not like you're hanging out together. You're just hanging out in
You're
the same
It's
place.
not like,
Yeah.
let's celebrate my birthday. It's just like the focus is all around getting high.
Yep.
And I mean, even if you just drink, like the focus is around drinking. I mean, you're not even going to remember your birthday probably. but I don't have birthdays the same way. You know, I can remember them. I get to enjoy the time that I have with my friends and family, and it's just incredibly more meaningful, right? I have a birthday.
Right.
It's not just another day. It's cool. It's an interesting experience to have a birthday sober, that's for sure.
It is.
Yeah.
Especially your first one. It might be kind of weird, I think. Corey, you just had a birthday?
Yeah, I did, and I was thinking about it as we were hearing the question. It boils down to a lot of when I first got sober, I didn't know how to have fun. Like, I understood the concept, but I didn't know the things I liked, and I was still wrapped up in, like, I need drugs or I need to be drunk in order for this to be fun.
Right.
And it turns out that, like, without drugs and alcohol, I can still be, like, goofy and still have fun, you know? And as a matter of fact, for my birthday, like, my family, like, we all went and hung out, and that was cool. It wasn't crazy, or, like, we didn't do anything wild. I got to hang out with my family. I got to be there. I got to hang out with them. I got to talk to them.
You were present.
Yeah. I got to connect with my family, and then I went with my friends. We went to a bowling alley and then to an arcade, and, like, we were out all night, you know? And I remember every minute of it, and I had a blast.
Yeah.
It turns out I'm not good at bowling, but I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't need to be loaded for any of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I still had fun, and it was just being open to things that I hadn't done in a really long time or have never done before. You know, I would always tell you, like, I don't really like to bowl. And who knows, I was 12.
Right.
But I tried again, and yeah, I'm terrible at it, but it's still fun. I still
Right.
enjoy hanging out with people, you know?
Right. It's not.
This person writes, I'm a little over 5 months into recovery. I've dropped all other drugs completely, but I'm under the supervision of an addiction psychiatrist, and they have me taking Adderall for ADHD. I truly believe that getting the increase in motivation and energy from my daily dose of Adderall keeps me in check. Obviously, it's not the greatest idea to be on an addictive stimulant in early recovery, but the controls I have in place include my parents holding/giving me the meds daily, quantitative drug tests to make sure I'm not abusing, and a direct line between my therapist and psychiatrist to communicate. Has anyone ever been in this situation before, and how did it pan out for you? I'm trying to get an idea of whether I'm putting my sobriety at risk.
Well, based on what we were talking about earlier,
Right.
Not a doctor.
Not a doctor, and I don't have any experience being on any medication in early recovery.
Neither do I.
Especially not any, like, stimulants or narcotics or
Yeah.
anything else.
The
you
only
know?
thing I'm on is antidepressants, and it's not a narcotic or stimulant, just what you said, so I don't think I could help you with that besides go to a meeting, maybe talk to your sponsor about it, and if you're using it for the right reason, I mean, that sounds kind of bad, but if you're really not abusing it, I mean, I'm not a doctor, so.
I would just have a plan in place for if it does end up happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the experience with that, and I'm not a doctor. But if you're worried about it, I would just have that plan in place. I mean, it sounds like there's controls already with parents and whatever else, but, you know, parents don't stop me from grabbing a bag of meth from somebody, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, it would scare me,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, I would be afraid. I would refuse it. But, I mean, that's me, and in fellowships like this, we encourage people with medical issues to go see a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They are the primary source of information, and so that's follow what your doctor says, and if anything goes wrong or if you find yourself abusing something, like, have a plan in place.
Right.
Because I have friends who have been on painkillers in recovery. They had surgery or something, so, like, they had to take painkillers. And the one thing that all three of them have said that was key was being open and honest with everyone around them about what was going on, what they were taking, why they were taking it. You know, and
It gets weird if you don't,
yeah,
I'm sure.
and it just creates that extra layer of accountability. Like, people know what's going on, so they're not gonna, you know, like, clearly you have an issue, this is why you're doing this. And they won't be so quick to judge you if they find out about it and it seems like you're trying to keep it secret, you know. That's the only advice I can offer, is just to be as open and honest as possible about it.
Yeah, or bless you. Maybe tell your doctor you have a substance abuse problem and see if there's any alternatives. I think that might be a good idea, because I know for me, I couldn't take it and be okay.
Yeah, definitely scary.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the next question. It's kind of a scenario looking for hope. He says, hey guys, I've made a mess again and I have to go clean it up. I have to go into recovery again and I have to take it seriously this time. I can't keep doing this to myself and lying to myself saying everything's okay because I know it's just not. I'll have to find other ways to deal with my issues, but if anyone has any encouraging words, I need them now more than ever. I'm scared to death.
I mean, if there's a breath in your body, you still have a chance. That's
Yeah.
pretty much what it is. If you're willing to put the action in, and you do put the action in, as far as from what I can see, you stay sober.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what it's like to look at like the burned out wreckage of my life and things are pretty grim and this is hopeless. There's no way I can ever like bring this back to anything normal. And it turns out that it's not as impossible as I would have believed. It's going to take some time and there's a little bit of work that has to go into it, but I'm almost certain like things are not as bad as they look. You know?
You're in a different state of mind when it's like
Yeah.
that. I would try to talk to as many people as you can and be open and honest.
Right.
Because you don't see things the same way. Like before I got sober, like my problems were huge and they piled up on me like crazy. But the one thing I've seen is like it can always be worse, and it can definitely get better.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been in that situation where I'm just so scared and I don't know if there's a way out, but there is. And I got out, like, this is an example of 3 people that have fought the battle that you're going through and have come out on top. So it definitely is possible. It's just if you are willing, like what Connor said, if you are willing enough to take the action and take the steps necessary in order to stay clean and sober, you can do it.
Final question. He says, hey guys, I'm trying to get a feel for what's in store for me and my family. We discovered my 21-year-old brother has been addicted to Suboxone. He's never used any other drugs before, and he says that he got it from a guy at work because he was having some health problems. He told us he hasn't had it in over a year, but I found him last night with it in his bathroom. Rough night last night, lots of denial, crying and screaming, but overall this morning he seems to be admitting the fact that he has a problem and that he needs help. Does anybody have any suggestions as to how we can help him?
That's a strange situation.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever encountered somebody who is just addicted to Suboxone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my experience. Usually it's Suboxone comes after the heroin abuse or the Percocet abuse or whatever kind of opiates they're using.
Yeah.
So I would be aware that that's a potential issue. But it sounds like, I mean, I had a similar experience with this where I was caught, right, getting high, and this person loved me, and there was a lot of crying, you know, a ton of crying. And, you know, the good drug addict I am, I said that I was throwing away all the drugs that I had, and I didn't. And I lied through my teeth. I kept getting high after that. And I sacrificed that relationship for that. And that is just how it goes. When I'm getting high and I'm not in a solution, I would just prepare yourself for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you don't know exactly what's going on. And if they're abusing stuff, the truth, it gets, you know, it gets unclear. You don't know what's exactly is happening. So.
Yeah, I know when I was still using and I'd get caught, in that moment the truth was whatever would serve me the best. Sometimes it was an outright lie, sometimes it was part of the truth, but it was almost never the entire truth, you know. And like you were saying, like that would be one thing I would expect too, is like be ready for more things to come out as this unfolds. It probably wouldn't be a good idea, or I'm sorry, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea for them to like take this family member to like a doctor, like an addiction specialist or something, like have them talk to someone outside of and detached from the family.
Yeah.
You know, because I know for me, it's really hard to admit things like this to people who care about me, but somebody who has no like real emotional investment in me, like I'm not gonna feel bad about telling them all these heartbreaking things.
Right.
True.
Get as much information as you can. I mean,
Yeah.
if they admit that they have a problem, right, like this person said, have them make a phone call. Like,
Yeah.
here's a place where you can get help. Or at least you can get some more information. Like, and I think it's incredibly important to have somebody on the outside that you can be honest with, so at least you know what you're dealing with yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a difficult situation, but I mean, at least try to direct towards a resource. I mean, like us, we're a resource. That's one of the primary reasons that we're here, to provide information, to help people when we can.
All right, so I'll go ahead and end with this final one. It says, in the last month, what is one thing you are grateful for in your life in recovery?
Family. That's it, just family.
Just my life, like just being alive. I'm just so grateful to be living so I can experience everything that my higher power has thrown my way.
One thing.
Well, I know. But
I don't know, take your pick, like hanging out with my friends and laughing so hard that I can't finish my breakfast because it's one of the funniest stories I've ever heard. You know, yeah, exactly.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Just all those small moments that make the weird ones worth it. You know, the small amazing things that happen in my life that make any of the bad things that I could choose to focus on, they're not that bad. I don't remember most of them.
Right.
Like you kind of answered your own question. Like the one thing I'm grateful for is my life in recovery, you know?
That story just kills me. I can't.
All right, well, I want to thank all of our guests here today. Connor, Bianca, Corey, thank you guys for coming in and doing our special Halloween version of Reflections.
Super spooky.
And we will see you guys next week. Of course, if you guys have any questions at all about recovery or topics relating to that, you can go to our website at